Evening from Lagos, everyone. You're watching Beyond 100 Days with Nifemi Oguntoye. On the show today, we're staying with the just concluded Edo governorship election as mixed reactions continue to trail the outcome. A civil society organization, the Committee for the Protection of People's Mandate, CPPM, has commended the governorship election, saying the outcome of the result is a reflection of the will of the people. The group, in a statement by its executive director, Nelson Akujimi, commended INEC for its professionalism, neutrality, and dedication to duty in the face of all odds by the successful and credible conduct of the recently concluded election. However, another civil society group, Yiaga Africa, is not in agreement with the commendation coming from the CPPM. It's condemning the results of the governorship poll conducted on Saturday, saying it failed the election integrity test. Yiaga Africa, in a statement by its chair of the 2024 Edo Election Mission, Dr. Aisha Abdullahi, and its executive director, Samson Itodo, argued that the 2024 Edo governorship election failed the electoral integrity test due to the lack of post-election statement on the transparency in the results collation process, which, according to it, led to the manipulation of results. INEC on Sunday declared the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Monday Okwewolo, winner after defeating its main challengers, Aso Ighodalo of the PDP and Olumide Akpata of the Labour Party. Let's talk to Programs Manager, Yiaga Africa, Paul James, who joins me on the show this evening. Mr. James, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for the invitation. Good evening.
Good evening. Great to have you. Let's begin with understanding the process with which Yiaga Africa conducted its observance of this election. You deployed 300 stationary and 25 roving observers for this exercise in what you call a representative random sample of polling units. How efficient is this system in accurately evaluating the election process, considering the significant difference between what you observe and the number of polling units?
Thank you very much again. So, yeah, this is the 19th time that Yiaga Africa is deploying the process result and verification for transparency methodology, which in the past we used to call the PVT, or parallel vote tabulation. This methodology has been deployed in over 52 countries. In Nigeria, it has been deployed in over 30 elections. Now, what the methodology does is that it provides timely and precise information about the voting and counting process, and it allows us also to verify the outcome of the election in near real time. You are right, it employs statistical principle. The idea is that you don't have the resources or the wherewithal to cover every location, but you employ what we do in our everyday life. We take a sample, a representative random sample, applying all the statistical techniques that allow every polling unit in the state the chance of equal representation. So based on that, we drew up the sample of 300 across the state. They are spread. The representativeness of the sample is such that, for instance, if you have Akoko Edo, for example, to have, say, 100 of the total 4,519 polling units in the state, if you do the percentage of 100 over the total polling units, whatever percentage you have is a percentage of polling units in Akoko Edo by the total polling unit in the state. So for a sample to be representative as well, it has to be reflective of the percentage of the polling unit for Akoko Edo. For instance, if polling units in Akoko Edo is 5.0 by the overall polling units in the state, our sample also has to be 5.0, but they are also spread across the state. Like I said, just like what we do in our everyday life, because if you go for tests, they may not necessarily have to take the entire blood from the system. They'll just take a small and run a sample.
I hear you, Mr. James. So your observers visited approximately how many polling units in this election?
Our observers were stationary. They did not move between polling units.
No.
So they were
I thought you said there were 25 of them roving.
Yes, I am coming to that. The stationary, our results are based off the report from those polling units in their purest from untainted results that came from the polling unit level. We've got roving observers 25. They were going around basically to report incidents and also to provide support for the stationary observers. So the data is based on the report from those stationary observers because they observe the entire process from the opening of polls to when results are posted at those levels.
I hear you clearly, but some school of thought opine that larger sample size are typically better because they kind of reduce the likelihood of sampling errors and also in a way, provide a more accurate representation of the exercise. Is that something you agree with?
Well, I hear you, but this is also a sample size a sample methodology that has a mind of its own with a confidence interval of even 95%, meaning if you repeat the same methodology across 95 times, you are also likely going to have the same outcome. Like I said, we have done it over and over. What we do is to extrapolate using what is called, of course, inferential statistics, because you are not going to be in every location, you infer. So you don't hear us call numbers. What you hear is for us making estimate within a limited range that we thought the INEC results should fall in. For instance, if you recall on Saturday, we had reported commencement of polls by 8:30 in the morning in only 19% of polling units, but we gave a range plus or minus 2%. That is, if INEC will announce polling units have started by 8:30 in, say, like 21% of polling units, it will still be within our range. This is based on those established samples.
I hear you clearly because, Mr. James, I want us to be able to get to the meat of your observance, but I just want some clarity as to how you arrived at, your conclusion. For instance, your organization deployed what it calls the process and results verification for transparency methodology. Clarify for us if that is the same with the parallel vote tabulation system you talked about a few years ago.
True, it is the same. What we had done is just to change the name because we thought the PVT conversation was limiting because it's almost like you are just collecting results and tabulating results. But you cannot divorce the process from just election outcomes. So we thought it is important to highlight the transparency of even the process of the election before you talk about the election outcome. So we thought the combination of that would give us the idea. For us, election is not just about what happened on election day. We look at what happened before the election, during the election, and post-election before we do the judgment call. And that is why if you see in the statement, we had highlighted initially where we thought there could be problems. In our pre-election statement, we highlighted likely hotspots, 8 local government. And in the results conversation that we're having, we now have realized that 4 of those local government where we're having challenges now, we highlighted the hotspots as hotspots in our pre-election findings. So we don't look at results in isolation. We look at what had happened before we run the call like I had highlighted it earlier. So in the same methodology, what we did was to expand the scope now to look at both before election and after election.
Mr. James, Yiaga is claiming that this election failed the electoral integrity test due to lack of transparency in the result collation process, which, according to you, led to the manipulation of results. What's your evaluation of the process before collation?
So for us, before the commencement of polls, we said that 3 critical tests will for us shape the outcome of the election. One, like you had highlighted, is the election integrity test. That is on the part of the election commission to give the people of Edo the kind of election that they deserve, or opportunity to vote in the kind of election that they deserve. And then the resilience test on the part of the citizens to support all challenges and be able to participate in the process. And also the impartiality test on behalf of that is for security agencies to also allow the people of the state unhindered access to the polling units, protection, and then also guarantee level playing field for everyone that will be involved. We arrive at those conclusions because based on our observations, some of the challenges that had bedeviled elections in the past still resurface in the Edo election. For instance, there were concerns with logistics deployment. But then, when largely, after INEC had fixed the logistics concerns, election started late, don't forget, but when the process improved, INEC largely gave the people the opportunity to vote because it even extended the time for voting.
All right.
Largely, the process went well. Beavers worked well. What was the problem, why we flagged, was the results collation process, especially between the polling unit and the collation center. What we saw, especially from 4 local government in Oredo, Ipoba, Oha, Ego, and Esako, were not reflective of what our observer has seen at the polling unit level.
I hear you clearly, Mr. James. So I have another election observer here who's with the Committee for the Protection of People's Mandate. His position is quite different. Perhaps we can just bring in him to compare notes. Mr. Nelson Ekujime, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Nigerians.
So you heard Yiaga say all is well, you know, from the kickstart of the election. In fact, in places where the election started late, INEC allowed people who were on the queue to vote. But the challenge began with the coalition exercise, and he was specific. I mean, the organization is specific about the areas concerned, like Ikobahoa, Isako West, and Oredo, and a few others. That's the point where INEC failed the electorate. What did you observe on the field?
Well, thank you very much. What I observed on the field was that in many of the polling stations across the 18 local governments, polling started precisely between 8:30 to 9 a.m. But we had reports of some local governments where INEC personnel did not arrive even till about maybe 11, thereabouts. But like it is in the tradition of INEC, the closing time of polls, which is supposed to be 2:30 p.m., was extended to allow voters on queue to exercise their rights. Election ended at the polling stations. Results were declared by the polling officer, signed, of which he signed the formicity that was countersigned by party agents and security officers, who all had copies of the results. Then from that level, it moved from the polling station level, the collation started at the ward level. You know, a ward is made up of several polling units. Right. From the ward level, the only missing stakeholder is the voter. Every other stakeholder is present, even including the party. Now we have the ward collation party agents. From the ward collation level, it moves to the local government level. At that level, we also have all these stakeholders involved, except the electorate. Right. So, for me, along this trajectory, we didn't hear any report of any of the stakeholders raising objection as about the coalition. Because
they raised objection at the level of the local government coalition. Because what was reported was that in places like Ikobahoa, when the coalition was supposed to take place at the local government, it was moved to the state coalition center.
Yes.
And that's the point of difference that Yiaga is.
Well, you and I are aware that even in the previous election, INEC personnel were forced to make a declaration of results at a collation center. And the INEC personnel now moved back to the INEC office and now said the result we declared at the center was made under duress, that this is where we want to make the declaration of the genuine result. So if INEC personnel and the security agencies observe that there's a threat to life and property, it becomes imperative that they will move to a safe place. Because
the challenge, however, is that some of the parties are claiming that their agents were not allowed into the state collation center where that collation happened.
Well, the question we should ask those parties, in as much as I'm not here to speak for INEC, is that the results that you have from your party agents with the result released by INEC, did it tally?
Okay.
So if the result tally, who prevented you from accessing the INEC office? Then they can make a report to INEC.
Let's take a short break and we'll be back with more. Stay with us, everyone. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. You're watching Beyond 100 Days with Nifebi Okunto. We have Paul James, Programs Manager with Yiaga Africa. Nelson Ekujeme is right here with me in the studio, another observer of the Edo State governorship election. Mr. James, quickly, I'm looking at the point of inference that you are talking about here. This manipulation Yiaga is alleging during the collation process is a function of disparities between the official results released by INEC, right? And the PRVT estimates. Is that accurate?
Yes. So I give you an instance. In Esako West local government, our observer reported that was where there was sporadic gunshots and people scampered for safety. And then our observer report, I even have it when you went off when we went for a break. I tried to check through my phone. We had 2 wards that were not even collated at the collation center, but the observer saw that on IREF and highlighted that in his own report. But the point to note is that our estimate, like I said, were based on the results from the polling unit level. And we thought if INEC had done its work well, and this is not also casting aspersion on any party, whereas if you read our statement, we were very clear about where we thought results for this party fall off our margin, result for the 3 parties in the election fall off our margins in some local government, in Erodo, Ego, Iboba, and all of that. So irrespective, it could be either of the parties. We are just saying that perhaps even it could be at the tabulation stage that INEC didn't do.
The point I was actually making, Mr. James, is that these figures we are referring to are Yiaga's figures which were aggregated independently. That means we're assuming that Yiaga's figures are accurate. I thought you were going to reference IREF numbers. I think we lost that connection. We'll get back to Mr. James. Mr. Kujebe, the challenge that PDP is raising now is that they have done their own calculation from what was posted by INEC, and they're saying the number is at variance with what was declared at collation center. You don't think that is an outright indictment on the integrity of the process?
Absolutely not. Because the election was conducted, it was 18 political parties participated. So if one party out of 18 is raising allegations, we won't dismiss it. But it does not taint the integrity of the election, 1 out of 18. So what we are saying here is that...
Are you saying that you won't even give it a chance to do the calculation independently?
No, I'm not saying that. I said we won't jettison the allegation or whatever observations they have made. But it is not enough because they have made an observation. It is for them to prove it with facts. And I'm happy that Paul James rightly alluded to the fact that there were gunshots. And you know, even as a policeman, if we are gunshots, you first of all look for a safe place, before you perform your duty. So nobody has an extra life. You don't expect INEC to continue collation at a place where even the life of observers, the media, and party agents will be put at risk. We have seen situations where INEC has postponed the election.
The allegation is that the violent interruption was designed by the party involved to ensure that the collation leaves the local government to the state collation center where the opposition agents were not allowed in.
Well, if that be the allegations, we expect that since they want to assume the role of security agencies, which they don't constitutionally have the powers to do, then we assume that they should present those facts to INEC, as well as urge INEC to invite the security agencies to investigate. Because, like you say in media, opinions are free, but facts are sacred. So you can allege whatever you want to, but in law, you must come with your facts. And even commonsensically, you must come with facts to convince any rational thinking being.
I understand the law angle, but we're just reviewing what has happened in the field vis-a-vis what was observed.
It's not about the law, it's about rationality. That if you are telling me you have lost your phone, the first thing I'll ask you, where? If you tell me you have lost it within the premises of TVC, you must be able to identify the location so that we can narrow the search. We can't be searching everywhere.
All right. Mr. James, we have a very few minutes remaining on the program, and I want you to clarify 2 issues for us. The first is that this disparity you're talking about is between the official figures from INEC and the figures independently gotten by Yiaga in those selected polling units where you monitored. I'm saying that means we're going to have to assume that your figures are accurate. Why not use figures from IREV?
Exactly, good question. Now, even INEC will tell you that the figures of IREV are uploaded figures, and they are not also bounded by law to use it for any legal. They are just there. They are on IREV for people to do research. The results we got were from the polling unit. In fact, when the report started trickling in yesterday, what we did was to compare what the observers sent as against what was on the IREV. Specifically, we spotlighted Ego and Oredo. My team took the pains of going through every report that was submitted, and I could tell you that from those locations at the polling unit level, the results that were on IREV match the one that we have on our computer, on our systems. The point I had made earlier, this is not all supporting any party. This is all providing an unbiased opinion about what we thought was the outcome.
I hear you clearly.
There was manipulation at some point, so it behoves on the commission to come tell Nigeria where those manipulations happen. I understand the point by Mr. Nelson about loss of lives and all of that. And this is not also our own position about that those were done to manipulate the process. We're just saying that there was a place that could have been a problem.
Mr. James,
have chance to
I'm afraid
Section 65 of the Electoral Act and review elections that are conducted under questionable circumstances.
We have completely run out of time, Mr. James, but I want you to answer this in a few seconds if you can. INEC's turnout and rejected ballots align with your estimates in all of the local government areas. Does this consistency impact your overall assessment of electoral integrity? Well, if you also want to talk about what counts as electoral integrity, elements you want to see inclusivity, accountability, and transparency. If the transparency of the process is questioned, then of course it impacted on the integrity of the election, because of course people are calling INEC to account for places where we saw infractions. Mr. Kujimi, one more minute we have to go. You have rated INEC high.
Absolutely.
Based on what you saw.
Yeah.
What was the strength of your observation, the number of your team?
The number of my team was less than 100. Less than 100?
Yeah. So, you know, one of the issues I raised with him also is that Yiaga had 300 observers on the ground. They had about 25 roving. Yeah. And they call it, you know, a representative system. Yeah. I'm wondering how accurate, you know, that level of observance is to be able to determine what really happened in Edo.
Well, if you listen to James very well, he said estimates is based on assumptions. The election results is a document in law for which even party agents have, you know, appended their signature and the security agencies. So if we have any discrepancy, I'm sure INEC as an institution will not gloss over it. INEC has a mechanism for even reviewing elections while it is ongoing, not to talk of after the conduct of the process.
But you know that it gets really fishy if you are collating without a party agent, an agent of a particular party represented at that.
Well, Nifemi, let me also educate our viewers. In some collation centers, the party agents go missing. They just disappear.
All right.
So will you go and bring a ghost to represent that party?
All right, that's our time. Nelson Kujimi, Mr. Paul James, thank you so much for joining us on the program this evening. This is you know, a developing story, and we're going to continue this conversation subsequently. You can watch it again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Okuntoye.
Bola Ahmed Tinubu do solemnly swear